Did she tell you she's adopted? The words sliced through the rehearsal dinner like a knife through silk. My mother's voice carried across the private dining room at Marcello's, loud enough for every single person to hear. Daniel's champagne glass stopped halfway to his lips. His parents froze mid-conversation. Even the waiter carrying our appetizers hesitated in the doorway. I felt my face go hot, then cold. My fingers gripped the edge of the white tablecloth so hard I thought I might rip it. Around me, 24 people stared, waiting for my reaction. My mother sat 3 seats away, wearing her favorite emerald dress and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She looked pleased with herself, like she'd just revealed the winning card in a game I didn't know we were playing. "Diane, what are you talking about?" Daniel's mother, Patricia, asked carefully. My mother leaned forward, lowering her voice just enough to seem concerned rather than cruel. "I just think Daniel deserves to know the truth before tomorrow. Don't you agree, Leah?" My throat closed. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. The room felt smaller suddenly, like the walls were pressing in. This was supposed to be a celebration. Tomorrow was my wedding day. Instead, I was being ambushed by the woman who gave birth to me. My name is Leah Winters, and until 30 seconds ago, I thought my mother was just controlling and judgmental. I didn't know she was capable of this level of cruelty. I'm 28 years old, a graphic designer living in Portland, and I've spent my entire life trying to earn Diane's approval. Perfect grades in school, scholarships to college, a stable career, a respectable fiancé from a good family. Nothing was ever enough for her. She always found something to criticize. Some way I fell short of her impossible standards. But this was different. Daniel set down his glass slowly. His blue eyes found mine across the table, confused and hurt. "Leah, what is she talking about?" "I have no idea," I managed to whisper. My voice sounded strange, like it belonged to someone else. My mother made a soft clicking sound with her tongue. "Oh, sweetheart, don't pretend you didn't know. Your father and I told you years ago." That was a lie. A complete, calculated lie. And she knew it. I could see it in the tiny smirk playing at the corner of her mouth. She was enjoying this, watching me squirm, watching my perfect evening dissolve into chaos. The dinner ended badly. Daniel excused himself and walked out before the main course arrived. His parents followed, throwing apologetic glances over their shoulders. My mother stayed seated, sipping her wine like nothing had happened, chatting with her sister about vacation plans. I sat frozen, feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My best friend Kristen grabbed my arm. "We're leaving. Now." She practically dragged me out of the restaurant. I barely remember getting to her car. The Portland city lights blurred past the window as she drove, her jaw tight with anger. "What the hell was that?" she kept saying. "What the actual hell was that?" I couldn't answer. My phone buzzed constantly in my purse. Texts from relatives. Calls from Daniel. A message from my mother that made my stomach turn. "You'll thank me someday." Better he knows now than after the wedding. Kristen pulled into my apartment parking lot and turned to face me. "Leah, did you know? About being adopted?" "No," I whispered. "I swear to God, Kristen, I had no idea. She never told me. Not once." Then why would she say that? That was the question that kept me awake all night. Why would my mother humiliate me in front of everyone I loved? What did she gain from destroying my wedding? Morning came without sleep. My eyes were swollen from crying. My phone showed 37 missed calls. The wedding was supposed to start in 9 hours, but I knew it wasn't happening. Not after last night. Not after everyone saw me fall apart. Daniel finally answered when I called him around 7. His voice was flat, exhausted. "I need time to think." "About what?" My voice cracked. "About marrying someone whose mother just humiliated her in public?" "About whether you were planning to tell me." He paused. "About whether there are other things you've kept from me." My chest felt like it was caving in. "Daniel, I didn't know. I swear on everything I love, I didn't know I was adopted until she said it last night." Silence stretched between us. Finally, he said, "I believe you. But I need some space. This is a lot to process. He hung up. I stared at my wedding dress hanging on the closet door, the ivory lace I'd saved for months to afford. Kristen was asleep on my couch, her arm thrown over her eyes. The apartment felt too quiet, too still. My phone buzzed again. Another text from my mother. Call me when you're ready to be reasonable. Reasonable. That word echoed in my head. Since when was public humiliation reasonable? I spent the morning canceling the wedding. The venue, the caterer, the photographer, all of it. Each phone call felt like another small death. The florist actually cried when I explained what happened. Your mother did what? She gasped. By noon, it was done. The wedding that took 8 months to plan was erased in 3 hours. I sat on my bedroom floor, still in my pajamas, surrounded by gift bags and thank you cards I'd never send. Kristen made coffee and sat beside me in silence. She knew better than to try to fix this with words. I need answers, I finally said. Real answers, not whatever twisted story my mother's selling. Where do you start? I thought about that. My father died 6 years ago from a heart attack. He was the gentle one, the buffer between my mother's sharp edges and my sensitive heart. If anyone would have told me the truth, it would have been him. But he'd never mentioned adoption. Never even hinted at it. Unless he had, and I just wasn't looking. My Aunt Carolyn, I said suddenly. Dad's sister. She and my mother barely speak. If there's truth to be found, she'll know it. Kristen nodded. Then let's go. Aunt Carolyn lived 40 minutes outside Portland in a small house surrounded by pine trees. She answered the door in gardening gloves, her silver hair pulled back in a messy bun. Her smile faded when she saw my face. Leah, honey, what's wrong? I told her everything. The rehearsal dinner. My mother's announcement. Daniel leaving. The cancelled wedding. With each sentence, Aunt Carolyn's expression grew darker. When I finished, she pulled off her gloves and led me inside without a word. Sit, she said, pointing to her floral couch. I'll be right back. She disappeared into her bedroom. Kristen and I exchanged glances. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. Whatever Aunt Carolyn was getting, it was important. Important enough that her hands shook slightly when she returned carrying a small wooden box. She set it on the coffee table between us. Your father asked me to keep this safe. He made me promise never to give it to you unless Diane forced my hand. She looked at me with sad, knowing eyes. I think she just did. My hands trembled as I opened the box. Inside was a single envelope, yellowed with age. My father's handwriting on the front, for Leah, when she needs the truth. I stared at the envelope for a long moment, afraid to open it. Afraid of what truth waited inside. Kristen squeezed my shoulder. Aunt Carolyn sat across from us, her face drawn and tired. He wrote that 2 weeks before he died, she said softly. He was having chest pains. He knew something was wrong. And he knew your mother would eventually show her true colors. My fingers slid under the seal. The paper inside was thick, expensive. My father's neat handwriting filled both sides. I started reading, and my entire world tilted sideways. My dearest Leah, if you're reading this, then your mother has already twisted the story. She's probably told you that you're adopted, that we lied to you, that your whole life was built on secrets. None of that is true. You are my daughter, by blood and by heart. Your mother has been threatening to tell you lies about your birth for years, using it as leverage whenever I disagreed with her. I never thought she'd actually do it, but I prepared for this possibility. You deserve to know the real story. I looked up at Aunt Carolyn, my vision blurring with tears. What does he mean? Keep reading, she whispered. I forced my eyes back to the letter. My father's words swam on the page. When you were born, your mother had severe postpartum depression. She refused to hold you, refused to feed you, said she'd made a mistake having a child. I took care of you those first 3 months while she recovered. When she finally came around, she was different. Colder. She loved you in her way, but there was always this distance, like she resented you for existing. One day, she told me she wished you'd been adopted so she could return you. That's when I knew our marriage was broken beyond repair. But I stayed because leaving meant losing you. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely hold the paper. Kristen took it from me gently and continued reading aloud. About 5 years ago, during one of our worst fights, your mother threatened to tell you that you were adopted. She said she'd make you believe I wasn't your real father, that everything was a lie. She wanted to hurt me by destroying your trust in our family. I told her if she ever did that, I'd make sure you knew the truth. So I'm writing this letter as insurance, as proof. Leah, you are mine. I was there when you were born. I held you first. I named you after my grandmother. Your mother can rewrite history all she wants, but she can't change biology or love. Kristen's voice broke on the last sentence. She handed the letter back to me. The final paragraph was short. I've left documents with Carolyn, medical records and birth certificates that prove everything. If you're reading this, use them. Don't let your mother's lies become your truth. I love you more than words can say. Always, Dad. The silence in Aunt Carolyn's living room was absolute. I clutched the letter to my chest, crying so hard I couldn't breathe. My father had known. He'd known my mother would do this, and he'd tried to protect me from beyond the grave. There's more, Aunt Carolyn said quietly. She reached into the box and pulled out a manila folder. Hospital records from your birth. DNA test results your father had done privately. Even a letter from the doctor who delivered you, confirming that Diane was your biological mother. I took the folder with numb fingers. Every document inside screamed the same truth. I was not adopted. My mother had lied to sabotage my wedding, to hurt me, to maintain control over my life even when I was trying to build something separate from her. Kristen leaned over my shoulder, reading. This is psychotic, she breathed. Why would she do this? Because she's losing control over Leah, Aunt Carolyn said. Her voice was hard, angry. Your father told me years ago that Diane couldn't stand the thought of you getting married and leaving her influence. She wanted to destroy the wedding, make Daniel doubt you, isolate you so you'd come crawling back to her. Well, it worked, I said bitterly. Daniel thinks I'm a liar. Everyone at that dinner thinks I kept secrets. And my mother gets to play the concerned parent who was just trying to help. Kristen shook her head. No, we're not letting her win this. She just handed you the ammunition to destroy her. I looked down at my father's letter, at his careful handwriting. I don't want revenge. I just want Daniel back. I want my life back. Then you need to show him this, Aunt Carolyn said firmly. Show him everything. Make him understand what kind of woman your mother really is. Daniel agreed to meet me that evening at a coffee shop downtown. He looked exhausted, like he'd slept as badly as I had. We sat in a corner booth, 2 cups of coffee growing cold between us. I slid the envelope across the table. My father wrote this before he died. My aunt has been keeping it safe. I need you to read it. Daniel picked up the letter hesitantly. I watched his face as he read, watched the confusion shift to shock, then to anger. When he finished, he set it down carefully, like it might shatter. Your mother lied about you being adopted? Completely lied. She was trying to sabotage the wedding. His jaw tightened. Why would anyone do that to their own daughter? Control, I said simply. She can't stand that I'm building a life that doesn't revolve around her. She's been holding this threat over my father for years. Now that he's gone, she finally used it. Daniel reached across the table and took my hand. His palm was warm, solid. I'm so sorry. I should have defended you last night. I should have called her out right there. You didn't know, I said, tears spilling down my cheeks. Neither did I. He pulled me up and wrapped his arms around me. I buried my face in his shoulder and cried for everything I'd lost in the last 24 hours. When I finally pulled back, Daniel's expression had changed. There was something steel in his eyes now, something determined. What are you thinking? I asked. I'm thinking, he said slowly, that your mother needs to face consequences. Real ones. We decided to postpone the wedding, not cancel it. I'm marrying you, Daniel said firmly. Just not until we deal with your mother first. Over the next week, we quietly gathered ammunition. Aunt Carolyn gave us copies of all the documents my father had left. I went through old emails and text messages, finding a pattern of manipulation I'd never noticed before. Every time I'd achieved something, Mom had found a way to undermine it. Got promoted at work. She'd comment that I was neglecting family. Bought my first car. She'd criticize my financial choices. Gotten engaged. She'd started planting doubts about Daniel being ready for marriage. Kristen helped me create a timeline. Look at this, she said, pointing to her laptop screen. Every major life event, she sabotages. It's not random. It's calculated. Daniel's father, Thomas, was a respected attorney. When we showed him everything, his face went pale. This is psychological abuse. Sustained, deliberate psychological abuse. Can we do anything about it legally? Daniel asked. Thomas hesitated. It's complicated. She hasn't broken laws exactly. But she's destroyed your reputation in the community. That might qualify as defamation. He looked at me seriously. The question is, what do you want? Revenge or resolution? I thought about my father's letter. About all the years he'd protected me from her toxicity. I want her to stop. I want everyone who heard her lie to know the truth. Thomas nodded slowly. Then we'll need to be strategic. The opportunity came sooner than expected. My mother's real estate agency was hosting their annual charity gala, a huge event where Portland's wealthy elite gathered to donate and network. She'd been planning it for months, and it was her pride and joy. The perfect stage for a public redemption. Daniel's family had been invited weeks ago. When his mother Patricia called my mother to confirm their attendance, Diane actually had the nerve to sound pleased. I'm so glad you're coming despite everything. I know it's been difficult, but family is family. Patricia hung up and turned to me with disgust. That woman is unbelievable. She thinks she won, I said quietly. She thinks I'm too embarrassed to fight back. Thomas smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. Then let's prove her wrong. We spent 2 weeks preparing. Thomas helped me draft a statement, something clear and factual that couldn't be twisted. Kristen designed a simple presentation, just key documents and timelines. And Daniel practiced with me every night, helping me stay calm and focused. You're not attacking her, he reminded me. You're just telling the truth. Let the facts speak for themselves. The night of the gala, I dressed carefully in a navy blue dress that made me look professional and put together. Daniel wore a sharp suit. His parents flanked us as we walked into the hotel ballroom, a united front. My mother spotted us immediately. The color drained from her face. She hadn't expected me to show up, and definitely not with Daniel and his family. She recovered quickly, forcing a smile and moving through the crowd toward us. Leah, sweetheart, what a surprise. Hello, Mother. My voice was steady, stronger than I felt inside. People around us were starting to notice the tension. Diane kept her smile fixed. I'm so glad you came. We should talk, clear the air. This whole misunderstanding has gone on long enough. There's no misunderstanding, I said clearly. You lied about me being adopted to sabotage my wedding. And you knew exactly what you were doing. Her eyes went hard. Lower your voice. This isn't the place. Actually, it's the perfect place. I pulled out my phone, where I'd saved photos of all the documents. You made your accusation public. At my rehearsal dinner, in front of 24 people. So I'm making the truth public too. Diane's fake smile cracked. Leah, don't you dare. But I was already moving toward the small stage where announcements were made. Daniel and his father followed close behind. My heart was hammering, but my hands were steady. This was it. This was my moment to take back my story. The event coordinator looked confused when I stepped onto the stage, but Thomas whispered something to her and she handed me the microphone. The room gradually quieted, everyone turning to face me. I found my mother in the crowd, her face pale with rage. Good evening, everyone. My name is Leah Winters. Many of you know my mother, Diane Winters, who owns Cascade Realty. Some of you were at my rehearsal dinner 3 weeks ago, where she announced to a room full of people that I'm adopted. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. My mother started pushing toward the stage, but Thomas blocked her path with a pleasant smile and a firm hand. That announcement destroyed my wedding, I continued, my voice clear and calm. It caused my fiancé to walk out, my family to doubt me, and my entire life to fall apart. The only problem is, it wasn't true. I'm not adopted. I never was. My mother fabricated that lie to sabotage my marriage. The murmuring grew louder. People were staring at Diane now, who stood frozen near the stage, her face bright red. I pulled up the first photo on my phone, the image projecting onto the screen behind me thanks to Kristen's technical setup. This is my birth certificate. You can see both my parents' names clearly listed. This is a hospital record from the day I was born, showing my mother, Diane Winters, as the delivering patient. I swiped to the next image. This is a letter from my father, written before his death, explaining that my mother had threatened for years to tell me I was adopted as a way to control me and hurt him. I could see people in the crowd pulling out their phones, taking pictures and probably texting others about what was happening. My mother looked like she wanted to run, but there were too many eyes on her now. She was trapped by her own social circle. I'm sharing this publicly because that's how she chose to attack me, I said. Publicly, viciously, and without mercy. So now everyone who heard her lie can hear the truth. I am not adopted. I have never been adopted. And my mother knew that when she chose to humiliate me. I handed the microphone back to the coordinator and stepped off the stage. The room erupted into conversation. People swarmed my mother, asking questions she couldn't answer. Others approached me with apologetic faces, saying they'd heard about the dinner and believed her story. Daniel wrapped his arm around me. "You did it," he whispered. "You really did it." The fallout was immediate and brutal. By morning, my mother's lie had become the talk of Portland's real estate community. Several of her clients called to terminate their contracts. The charity board she sat on requested her resignation. Even her own sister posted on social media supporting me and condemning Diane's behavior. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from relatives I hadn't heard from in years, all apologizing for believing my mother's story without question. Friends reached out, offering support and asking if I was okay. The contrast between this response and the silence after the rehearsal dinner was stark. My mother called me exactly once. Her voice was icy, controlled. "You've destroyed my reputation. I hope you're proud of yourself." "I didn't destroy anything," I said calmly. "You did that the moment you decided to lie about me in public." "I was trying to protect you." "From what?" "From happiness. From love. From having a life that doesn't revolve around you." She was silent for a moment. "You'll regret this, Leah. Family doesn't betray family like this. You betrayed me first. At my rehearsal dinner. In front of everyone I love. You don't get to play the victim now." She hung up. That was the last time we spoke for months. With my mother's lies exposed, Daniel and I quietly rescheduled our wedding. This time, we kept it small. Just close friends and Daniel's family. No elaborate dinner, no public announcement, no opportunity for drama. We got married on a Saturday afternoon in October at a small vineyard outside the city. Kristen was my maid of honor. She cried through the entire ceremony, mascara running down her face. "I'm just so happy you got your moment," she whispered during photos. But the best part came during the reception. Thomas stood up to make a toast, and instead of the typical funny stories and well wishes, he pulled out a familiar envelope. "Leah's father couldn't be here today," Thomas said, his voice carrying across the intimate gathering. "But he left something behind that I think she'd want to share." He handed me the envelope. I knew immediately what it was, my father's letter. My hands shook as I opened it, but Daniel steadied me, his hand on my back. "Should I read it?" I asked the room quietly. Everyone nodded. So I read my father's letter out loud, the whole truth about my mother's manipulation and his efforts to protect me. By the end, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Even Daniel's tough, stoic father wiped his face with his napkin. "My dad knew my mom would try to hurt me," I said when I finished. "But he also knew I'd be strong enough to survive it." And he was right. The room erupted in applause. The weeks after our wedding were peaceful in a way I'd never experienced. Daniel and I moved into a small house in southeast Portland, far enough from my mother's neighborhood that we didn't risk awkward encounters. I threw myself into my design work, landing several big clients who'd heard my story and wanted to support me. But my mother's life continued to unravel. Her business lost more clients. Her friends stopped inviting her to events. The charity board didn't just request her resignation, they removed her name from all their materials. She'd built her entire identity on being respected in Portland's social scene, and now that respect was gone. Part of me felt guilty. Part of me wondered if I'd gone too far, if publicly exposing her was cruel. But then I'd remember her face at my rehearsal dinner, that smug satisfaction as she watched me crumble. And the guilt would fade. Kristen noticed me spiraling one afternoon. "You're allowed to feel good about this," she said firmly. "She tried to destroy your life. You just defended yourself." "I know. It's just hard. She's still my mother. Being your mother doesn't give her permission to abuse you." That sentence hit me hard. Abuse. I'd never thought of my mother's behavior that way, but Kristen was right. The constant criticism, the manipulation, the public humiliation, that was abuse. And I'd finally found the strength to name it. 3 months after the wedding, I received an unexpected letter. It was from my mother's business partner, Veronica, someone I'd met at company events over the years. She asked to meet for coffee, and curiosity got the better of me. Veronica looked tired when we met, older than I remembered. She ordered a latte and didn't touch it. "I need to tell you something about your mother. Something I should have told you years ago." My stomach tightened. "What is it?" "When your father died, he left you money. Quite a bit, actually. It was in a trust, supposed to go to you when you turned 25. I frowned. I turned 25 3 years ago. I never received any money. "I know." "Your mother intercepted it. She convinced the executor that you weren't ready for that kind of financial responsibility, that you'd waste it. She had herself named as the trustee and then used the money to expand her business." The coffee shop felt too hot suddenly. "How much money?" $250,000. The room tilted. "That was enough to buy a house, pay off student loans, start my own design firm. Instead, my mother had stolen it and used it to fund her company. Do you have proof?" My voice sounded hollow. Veronica pulled out a folder. "Everything's here. Bank transfers, trustee documents, emails between your mother and the executor. I made copies before I quit the company last week. I couldn't work for her anymore, not after watching what she did to you." I took the folder with shaking hands. "Why are you showing me this now?" "Because you deserve to know. And because she needs to be held accountable for more than just lying. She stole from you, Leah. That's a crime." Thomas reviewed the documents that evening. His face grew darker with each page he turned. "This is fraud. Clear, documented fraud. You could press charges." Daniel sat beside me on the couch, his hand in mine. "What do you want to do?" I thought about my father, about how he'd spent years protecting me from my mother's cruelty, about how even in death, he'd tried to give me a safety net. And she'd stolen it. "I want the money back," I said firmly. "Every penny. And I want everyone to know she's not just a liar, she's a thief." Thomas nodded. "I'll file a civil suit first thing Monday morning." The lawsuit made headlines. Local realtor accused of stealing daughter's inheritance read the story in the Portland Tribune. It included details about the trust, the money, and my mother's role as fraudulent trustee. The story spread quickly online, picked up by local news stations, and shared thousands of times on social media. My mother's remaining clients fled. Her business partner bought her out, paying pennies on the dollar for her share of the company. The real estate board launched an investigation into her practices. Everything she'd built over 30 years crumbled in a matter of weeks. She tried to fight the lawsuit, claiming the money was used for my benefit, for family expenses. But Thomas had the bank records showing she'd used it to renovate her office and buy a vacation condo in Arizona. The judge wasn't sympathetic. The court ordered my mother to repay the full amount plus interest and legal fees. Total damages, $320,000. She didn't have it. She'd spent the money, invested it in properties she couldn't quickly sell, lived beyond her means for years. The judge gave her 90 days to liquidate assets or face contempt charges. I watched from the courtroom gallery as the verdict was read. My mother sat at the defense table, her expensive suit rumpled, her hair graying at the roots. She looked small, defeated, nothing like the powerful woman who'd terrorized my childhood. When it was over, she turned and looked directly at me. There was no anger in her eyes anymore. Just exhaustion and something that might have been regret. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. I gave a brief statement thanking the court and my legal team, then Daniel and I escaped to his car. We drove in silence for a while, processing everything that had happened. "How do you feel?" he finally asked. "Honestly, empty. I thought I'd feel triumphant or vindicated. Instead, I just feel sad. Sad that she lost? Sad that it came to this. That she chose money and control over having a relationship with me. That she destroyed everything rather than just letting me be happy." Daniel pulled into our driveway and turned off the car. "You know this wasn't your fault, right? You didn't make her do any of this. She made her own choices." I knew he was right. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally were two different things. My mother sold her house to pay the judgment. She moved into a small apartment in Beaverton, a 45-minute drive from Portland. I heard through relatives that she'd taken a job at a title company, processing paperwork for minimum wage plus commission. The woman who'd owned her own business for 3 decades was now starting over from scratch. Part of me expected to feel satisfaction at her downfall. Instead, I just felt tired. Tired of the drama, the fighting, the constant vigilance. I wanted peace. Kristen threw me a party to celebrate the settlement. "You won," she said, handing me a glass of champagne. "You actually won." "It doesn't feel like winning," I admitted. "That's because you're not vindictive. You're just someone who stood up for herself." She clinked her glass against mine. "And that's something to celebrate." Daniel and I used part of the settlement money to buy a bigger house, one with a home office where I could grow my design business. The rest went into savings, a safety net my father had wanted me to have. Every time I looked at that bank balance, I thought of him, of his letter, of how he'd tried to protect me even after death. I visited his grave one afternoon, bringing fresh flowers. "I got the money back," I told his headstone. "And I'm okay. Actually, I'm better than okay. I'm free." The wind rustled through the cemetery trees, and I swear I felt his presence, proud and loving. 6 months after the court case, my mother reached out. It was a short email, sent late at night. "Can we talk?" I stared at those 3 words for a long time. Part of me wanted to delete it, to maintain the boundaries I'd worked so hard to establish. But another part, the part that still remembered her reading me bedtime stories and bandaging my scraped knees, that part wanted closure. I agreed to meet at a neutral location, a park near my old neighborhood. She was already there when I arrived, sitting on a bench feeding pigeons. She looked older, her face lined with stress I'd never noticed before. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. I sat down, leaving space between us. "What did you want to talk about?" She was quiet for a moment, watching the pigeons scatter and return. "I wanted to apologize. Really apologize, not the fake ones I've given before." "Okay. I was wrong. About everything. The rehearsal dinner, the adoption lie, stealing your inheritance. All of it." Her voice cracked. "I told myself I was protecting you, but I was really just trying to control you. And I lost you in the process." I didn't respond. I wasn't ready to make this easy for her. "Your father used to tell me I was too hard on you," she continued. "That I needed to let you make your own choices, your own mistakes. But I was so scared of losing you that I held on too tight. And that's exactly what made you leave." "You didn't just hold on too tight," I said quietly. "You tried to destroy my wedding. You stole from me. You lied to everyone I loved." "I know." Tears ran down her face. "I know, and I can't take any of it back. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. And that I understand if you never want to see me again." We didn't hug. We didn't make plans to meet again. I simply stood up, looked at my mother's tear-streaked face, and said, "Maybe someday I'll be ready to forgive you. But that day isn't today." I walked back to my car feeling lighter somehow. The conversation hadn't fixed anything, but it had given me something I needed: acknowledgement. My mother had finally admitted what she'd done. That was something. Daniel was waiting when I got home. "How did it go?" She apologized. A real one this time. And I told her I'm not ready to forgive her yet. I leaned against him. "Maybe I never will be." "Is that terrible?" "No," he said firmly. "Forgiveness isn't required. You're allowed to protect yourself." That night, I pulled out my father's letter one more time. I'd read it so often I had it memorized, but holding the paper, seeing his handwriting, that grounded me. He'd known this would happen. He'd prepared me for it. And even though he couldn't be here physically, his love still protected me. I carefully placed the letter in a frame and hung it in my office. A reminder of unconditional love, of truth, of the parent who'd chosen me every single day. A year after my mother's apology, I received news that Cascade Realty had been sold. The new owners were rebranding completely, erasing any trace of my mother's 30-year legacy. It felt like the final chapter closing on that part of my life. My own design business was thriving. I'd hired 2 assistants and was working with clients across the Pacific Northwest. The money from the settlement had given me freedom to take risks, to turn down projects that didn't feel right, to build something truly mine. Daniel and I started talking about children. The idea terrified me at first, bringing my own issues with my mother to the surface. What if I turned out like her? What if I damaged my kids the way she damaged me? "You won't," Daniel said confidently when I voiced these fears. "Because you're already aware of it. You're already breaking the cycle." Kristen agreed. "You know what abuse looks like now. You know what manipulation feels like. That awareness is everything." I started therapy to work through the family trauma. My therapist, Marcus, helped me understand that my mother's behavior wasn't about me at all. Hurt people, he said. Your mother's cruelty came from her own pain, her own insecurity. That doesn't excuse it, but it does explain it. Understanding didn't equal forgiveness, but it did give me perspective. My mother had been raised by a cold, demanding woman herself. She'd learned control instead of love, criticism instead of support. She'd repeated the cycle because she didn't know any other way. But I could choose differently. I could be the parent my father was, the one who protected instead of destroyed, who loved without conditions. 2 years after the rehearsal dinner that changed everything, Daniel and I welcomed our daughter into the world. We named her Caroline, after my Aunt Carolyn, the woman who'd kept my father's truth safe until I needed it. I held my baby girl in the hospital room, staring at her perfect tiny face, and made her a promise. I will never make you earn my love. I will never use you as a weapon. I will never lie to control you. You are safe with me. Daniel wrapped his arms around us both. She's going to have an amazing life. My mother sent a card when Caroline was born. Just a simple congratulations with no request to visit, no demand for involvement. I appreciated the restraint. Maybe she was finally learning. Aunt Carolyn visited often, bringing gifts and stories about my father. He would have loved being a grandpa, she said, rocking Caroline gently. He would have spoiled her rotten. Tell me more about him, I asked. I wanted Caroline to know her grandfather, even through stories. As Aunt Carolyn talked about my father's kindness, his humor, his unwavering love, I realized something important. My mother had tried to rewrite my history, to erase my father's truth and replace it with lies. But she'd failed. His letter had survived. His love had endured. And now I was passing that truth to my daughter. The framed letter hung in Caroline's nursery now, moved from my office. Someday, when she was old enough to understand, I'd tell her the whole story. About the grandmother who'd lied, the grandfather who'd protected, the mother who'd fought back. But I'd also tell her about resilience, about standing up for truth, about the difference between family by blood and family by choice. That evening, after Aunt Carolyn left and Caroline was asleep, I stood at the nursery window watching the Portland skyline light up against the darkening sky. My phone buzzed with a text from Kristen. How's my goddaughter? Perfect, I typed back. Everything is perfect. And for the first time in my entire life, I actually meant it. Not perfect in the way my mother had demanded, without flaws or complications. Perfect in the messy, real, hard-won way that comes from surviving something terrible and choosing to build something beautiful anyway. My mother had tried to destroy me with lies. Instead, she'd forced me to find my truth. She'd wanted to isolate me. Instead, she'd shown me who my real family was. She'd thought she was powerful. Instead, she'd revealed her weakness. The greatest revenge wasn't watching her business crumble or her reputation dissolve. It was this, standing in my daughter's nursery, in the home I'd bought with money she'd stolen, surrounded by people who actually loved me, building a life she could never touch. She'd lost everything trying to control me. I'd gained everything by letting her go. And as I looked at my sleeping daughter, at my father's letter on the wall, at the life I'd fought so hard to protect, I finally understood what freedom really meant. It meant choosing truth over comfort, boundaries over obligation, peace over performance. It meant knowing that some people, even mothers, don't deserve access to your life. And it meant teaching my daughter, from day one, that love should never hurt. My mother had taught me what not to be. My father had taught me what to become. And now, holding my daughter close, I was finally becoming it. The cycle was broken. The truth had won. And I was free.